Okay, today I'm going to show you a strategy called Cloze Strategy. And what Cloze Strategy is you take a passage and you remove words from the passage. Now, you can actually remove words randomly, or you can remove them based off of context. And today we're actually removing the words based off of context. Actually, you can see here it's already been done. And this is a sample activity that I would do with students. Usually I would give background information about the topic previously. This is Civil War, and it's about Frederick Douglass. So a lot of the students will already have like a good amount of information before. This would be done in like the middle of a unit. And this would be done with 9th graders. And this is actually an example that we would do as a class to prepare them to do a cloze activity on a primary source, which is harder because it's a primary source from the 1800s, so the language would be more difficult. Okay, so now I'm going to get into what this activity is and how to do it. Instructions: fill in the blanks with words provided in the word bank below. And this is the word bank here, as you can see. And as a class, I would go through each of these words. Usually, before I would start this activity, we would go through each word and give a definition, maybe have some images with these words if it's possible, because as you can tell, some of these words might be hard to do that with. So right now, we're going to go through each of the words that are going to be used today. Confederacy, father, offices, abolish, Lincoln, slave, writer, slavery, first, former, Massachusetts, civil, North, great, and newspaper. Okay, and then this is usually when I would go into a little bit more detail what the words mean if the students have any questions. Okay, so we're going to start with the first sentence, and we're going to do it sentence by sentence, so it's easier to make sure the sentence is done properly and the blank is filled in with the right answer. So, Frederick Augusta Washington Bailey Douglas was an abolitionist or orator and blank who fought against slavery and for women's rights. So I would underline this word orator because most students probably wouldn't know what that word means, and I would explain to them that it's a skilled public speaker. So I'd write speaker over top of it and just replace the word with that, because that's not a common word that those students would hear or use. Okay, so now we're going to look at the words we have in the word bank to see what would fit in this first sentence. And we're going to use these context clues. So we can tell from the sentence they're explaining stuff that he's done and like what he did during this era of like profession or what activities he kind of did, because abolitionist, that means he was for abolishing slavery. He was a speaker, so he must have done a lot of speaking events. So from the words that are up here, we're going to look at what would be the best fit. And we look at offices. That doesn't really make sense for things that he might have done. Newspaper, no. Writer, however, is something that just is like describing things that he would be. Like he could be a writer. And that seems like the best fit out of all the words that are provided. And don't forget to cross out the words after you use them. This will save you from getting confused on like, oh, did I use that word already? Or use it on accident. Okay, so let's read through this sentence again to make sure this makes sense, this writer. Frederick Augusta Washington Bailey Douglas was an abolitionist, a speaker, and a writer who fought against slavery and for women's rights. Yeah, that seems like it makes sense. And when I would start out with these blanks, I would most likely ask the students like, oh, what do you think would fit in the blanks? They might get it right at the first time, and if they do, I would ask them, oh, why do you think it's writer? And ask them to tell me what context that they got that information from to make sure they're not just guessing. So we'll go into the second sentence here. Douglas was the blank African-American citizen appointed to blank of a high rank in the United States government. So I'm going to start out with actually the second blank first, because I feel like that would be easier for the students to grab the context to figure out what the first blank will be. So African American citizen appointed to blank of high rank in United States government. So I would tell them, okay, let's look at the things that relate to the United States government in the word bank that we have above. Confederacy, possibly because it would be during the Civil War that they're fighting against the Confederates, but he wouldn't be appointed to that because they are not part of the Union at this time. So maybe Lincoln, appointed to Lincoln, no, that wouldn't really sound right or make sense. So the only thing that I see is offices here that would make the most sense to fit here. And also these questions would be guided based off of what the students are asking or what the students are trying to answer it. So I would change my responses based off of that. So after we have this offices, we can read African American citizen appointed to offices of high rank in the United States government. So Douglas was the blank African American to do that. So what would fit there? What would make him the blank African American to be appointed for offices? Father African American? No, that doesn't really sound right. Slave? No. Douglas was the slave African American. Doesn't really sound right or seem to fit with the structure of the sentence. Maybe the first. Douglas was the first African American citizen to be appointed. Yeah, first sounds right. It seems like that isn't a great achievement. Now, we're going to go on to the second part here, and it says, Douglas was born into slavery. His mother was a blank, and his blank was white. So this one you could either start with the first blank or the second blank. I think I'm going to start with the second blank first because it seems like they're talking about his early years as a child, his mother blank, and his blank. So it seems like we have the word father here, so father and mother seem to correlate, which would make sense to why it possibly could be father. Now, Douglas was born into slavery. His mother was blank, and his father was white. So if his father is white and we know he was born into slavery, his mother must be also in slavery, because from the historical context that we have, most people that were in slavery were African Americans, black, or from Africa, like someone from Africa, usually not a white male. So most likely she would be a slave. Okay, and I apologize that I crossed off abolish instead of offices. I must have slipped up. But I finished the rest of the document to show you what the completed form would be. And you want to make sure when you get to the last word that you do it and don't just put the last one that's left, because it could be wrong, because you could have mislabeled one of these blanks up here. So you want to make sure it still sounds right. And that's what we did. And these lessons can be adapted based off your own student skills. This one was for 9th graders, but it was more for an example, like I said. And some of the primary source documents, if this is a harder document, some students might not be at the language level to understand that. So you might have to simplify these documents or change which words are blanked out so the student gets the right technique to make sure they're grasping the right words and grasping the right structure of the sentences, so they do improve in their language skills. So you want to be aware of that, and that's what's nice about these Cloze strategies, is because they're easily adjusted and easy way to pick out different vocabulary words and different sentence structures that you want the student to understand, and also picking out keywords and contents. So I hope you enjoyed this example today, and I hope you have a good day.